told me that you happen to be one of Mizinga's role models, actually.
Dolika knows when she gets a call from me, then I'm trying to make a strategic decision.
And so far, so very, very good, Mizinga. So well done, you.
No, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we can jump right into the questions. So the first question we ask is, why are there less women taking up space in the corporate financial world? Even about 41% of women in the finance and insurance industry in Zambia, according to the latest survey. When we look at the top executive of registered commercial banks, which includes your Mizinga, women make up about 17% of the CEOs. Why is this? And I'll start with you.
Okay. No, thank you so much. I mean, firstly, please allow me to just say congratulations to Straight Up for the 10th year anniversary. And this is, to have this conversation with two ladies and moderated by yourself, Mwanda, just means that we are on the right track to breaking through that 17%. And it's been a journey. And to be honest, the times when I first took over as a CEO in 2008, we were very few women. We are still few, and there are still few around, but I think there are a lot more than then. So it shows that it is a journey. And just to answer your question, I think what we need is, having people like Alinani, continue to support women and give them a forum like he has given us. He would have had a lot of, powerful men on the forum today. So the United Nations came up with the He for She program. And I think that He for She program, I think it was maybe about 4 years ago now. I think that's one that remains relevant. Maybe it's been overtaken by other big agendas, but it remains relevant in the sense that the people who will promote the women to the next level will be the men, because they are the majority in these roles. They will be our biggest cheerleaders. So when you find that there's a man, running a business at a helm, being the CEO and promoting the women to that next level, then we will make, a huge difference in breaking through that 17% number. But I think what's more consoling is that at the middle management in most of our firms, you find that there are a lot of women. So it's really in breaking through, which is why this conversation is so timely, breaking through that barrier in terms of how do they move from that, middle management to the top leadership. And that's why we need, companies and businesses like Alinani is doing today to really continue being our cheerleaders. And then once we have a forum, it's easier for us to break through to the next level. But it's been a journey, it's getting better, but we are still far from it. We are.
Dolika, just to bring you in on this, I was having a conversation with my boss, and he generally wanted to find out why we have very few women, competent female economists or other professions that come out openly to pronounce themselves as an authority on various socioeconomic issues. I mean, we see a lot of men providing commentary, but we see very few women. So just tied to the leadership issue, why is it that we have very few women taking up space in this area?
Thank you so much, Mwanda. And like Mizinga, I'd really like to recognize Straight Up. Alinani, known you since the very beginning, and really, really glad to see that you've reached where you have in 10 years. And indeed, I think having some serious conversations, we had them then, and I think this is the culmination of a lot of the good work and good effort on your part. So thank you for that. You know what you asked, Wanda, is a very, very complex and difficult question. And there are many different reasons as to why. And women are in different situations, different environments, different personal spaces where it takes a certain amount of courage to be able to speak up. I think there are fewer women out in the public space because, one, the judgmental level tends to be very different between how a female is judged for voicing certain opinions and versus how a male is judged for voicing very similar opinions. That's one. But I think that should not stop women from speaking up. And we have a lot of women who speak up. I'm not going to mention names. I think we most of us know who the vocals are in Zambia. And these women, I think, should be, whether you like their message or you don't, should be commended for the role modeling of being able to speak up. But they paid a price to emphasize the point that I'm just making. They do pay a harder price than the men do. The second thing I think is that women, we tend to hold ourselves as the keepers of culture, the keepers of family, the keepers of society. So if I go out and speak my mind, the impact of what I say is not confined to Dolika, Banda or to Mizinga, Melu. The impact of what I say will filter all the way down to the children that I am raising as their opinion or their voice, when in fact it's got nothing to do that. So that's to do with that individual. That sense of collective responsibility for what we do and say, I think again, is a much higher hurdle for women. And therefore we tend to speak in community when we're together or fewer people, safe spaces, as they call them, safe containers, but less so out in the public space. I could say much more, but I think for me, topmost at the moment are these two things. So it takes a lot of courage to go out and personal sacrifice.
Now, Dolika, you've mentioned something quite important, which leads me to the next question on confidence and conviction. So there's a concept called leadership efficacy, which really refers to an individual's confidence in their knowledge, skills, and abilities to lead others. It assesses whether or not we believe in our abilities to succeed as leaders. And it is quite important because it determines whether or not even women take up, for instance, leadership positions, whether we even see ourselves as leaders. And you said it takes confidence, it takes, a lot of courage for you to step up and actually be a leader. So generally, women have been found to have low leadership efficacy. What can we do to build that conviction to lead, to put yourself out there in the firing range, knowing that you're exposing yourself to a lot of criticism?
Dolika, you're on mute.
I was on mute. I've been doing so many of these webinars, so the etiquette becomes second nature. Sorry for that. Look, it takes one to get to a point where one sees something so passionately and compassionately as wrong or an injustice and should not prevail. It is that point, somebody once said to me, the thing that makes you most angry is the thing that God or whoever you believe in put you on this earth to solve and resolve. And to get to that point, to identify that thing and to be moved to the point where, to use an expression that many Zambians will know, chive chive, I'm going for this. You have to have reached a certain level of maturity. You have to have reached a certain level of financial independence. You have to have experienced certain things in life that leave you as feeling very grounded, that nothing can shake you. To change anything, to be in a position of leadership. And one of my priests once said to me many years ago, Dolika, leadership is a lonely place, but it is an anointed place.
That's
so
right.
once you get there's no looking back.
Very powerful.
You put your hands to the plow, you cannot look back anymore. And so it takes a lot of growth and a lot of internal gravitas to say, it is time. Now is my time. And we're not all of us going to be at that level at the same time. But this is where I think the role modeling becomes so important, that if we look at a lot of women who have held positions of leadership, they haven't got there without being bruised. There's a few dead bodies behind us, but I always say I stand on the shoulders of giants.
That's right.
I come from Shaka's people. Shaka was raised and groomed and created by his mother, Nandi. She was a single mother. And so there is nothing in my blood that says I cannot reach for leadership. So a lot of it is about you, about the I getting to the right place. A lot of it is those shoulders that I'm talking about. Who do you stand on so that when the going gets rough, when the rubber hits the road, you know, for some people it's family, for some people it's God, for some people it's your friends, or combination of all of the things that I have said. It takes all of those to come out and say, I'm going to be a leader. And leadership, I must emphasize, is not visible. It doesn't have to be a place of height. It doesn't have to be a Mizinga or a Dolika because they are known and they are panelists on this thing. We are all leaders in our daily lives. And this is what I tell women all the time. I know few men. I better not say this, I know cut me off. I know few men who can juggle the way women juggle.
Yeah.
Who can stretch the pound or stretch the kwacha the way a woman can stretch the kwacha, who can make sure, regardless and in spite of everything else that's going on around them, the basics are in the house, the children are at school, the neighbors are fed, your grandmother is fed, your in-laws. There's nobody who runs and manages resources like a woman. So in business language, there is nobody who knows how to manage and stretch and leverage and build upon the few resources that we do have. So ladies, in whatever role you are, in whatever space you are already leading. It's just an extra step that you need to get into the public space to lead.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sorry, Mizinga, did you want to come in on this as well? How to build conviction? Yeah.
Look, I mean, I think Dolika has effectively said it, and that's why she's my mentor, right?
Indeed.
She's right. I mean, when you look at leadership, we are all leaders, but it's just, and I always give an analogy of the woman I find at the roadside who is selling, a cob of roasted maize. And that roasted maize, you look at her and her issues, they're not different from the issues I have, but she has to stretch that 20 kwacha she has on a daily basis. I mean, it takes a real woman to do that. I mean, if you were to say to a man, go and sell a cob of maize to pay your school fees, I'm telling you, I mean, okay, firstly, maybe the maize, but it would be difficult to stretch it and even have the patience to do that. So we are all leaders, and it's how we carry the others along in this leadership journey so that we identify who they are, we mentor them, we coach them, and we support them so that we are many Dolika Banda, around as we get to the, to the top. And, the top never ends, but it's how do we carry the rest? Mm-hmm.
Indeed. There's something, Dolika, you said, and I've heard it in one of your TEDx talks, and I think it's a very powerful line, I think, where you quote your pastor, and I think one of our panelists has also picked up on this, where you say leadership is a lonely place, but it is an anointed place. I think it's a very profound statement. Yes, indeed. And you said something also important about how women pay a price. Up leadership, especially for women, it exposes you to a lot of slander, defamation, negative criticism, which today, the advent of social media spreads quite quickly. And quite a number of women do not want to be, associated with that. So they will pull back a little bit. So, how do you grow a thick skin? I mean, you talk about, reaching a certain level, becoming grounded, such that you're not swayed by, whatever comes or whatever comments are there. But how else can we really sort of, become a bit more like men who don't seem to be, seemingly that affected by a lot of the negative comments that tend to come out when you're in the public eye?
Yeah, so maybe let me go first. We don't, I mean, it's a great question. And number one, we don't have to be like men. We don't have to be like them because God gave us such a special gift to be the woman. And Dolika talks about the ability to multitask, to do a lot, to stretch the kwacha. And so we don't want to be like men because men have a place in society and so do the women. And we must embrace and celebrate who we are. And because we are women, we understand, and leaders, especially women in leadership, should really understand why we are in these positions. We're not in these positions, number one, because they are easy. We are in these positions because it's the right thing to do, and it's service. So leadership is service. And when we talk about servant leadership, it's never easy. You know, it's like biblical when Jesus said, I'm going to wash your feet. It wasn't easy. You are the leader and you're washing somebody's feet. How is that going to happen? It's the same thing. So once we recognize that it's about servant leadership, it's about doing the right thing, then we'll be okay. So in terms of developing thick skin, I've learned that you don't have to develop this thick skin. What you have to do is to live a life of integrity. And my chairman always says this to me, Mizinga, when you wake up in the morning and you make the right decisions, it doesn't matter what's thrown at you, the right decision you made in line with the governance structures will protect you. So it's not about, when you're developing a thick skin, it's almost like when they say this to me, how am I going to feel? Trust me, as long as you know that what you did is above board, has the right integrity, it's in line with governance structures, you are like, it's okay, God. Your prayer becomes different. It's like, let them understand, maybe they haven't read the code of practice that I know exists. So it's really, really important that as women especially, we live, above board, above the governance structures. And then what we say defends us, it protects us. And I'm found in that position many a times. And what I find so interesting is I don't actually have to say anything to defend myself. The public will know that we know Mizinga. I know there was once when somebody posted something, when my social media was hacked. It was actually hacked. And they posted whatever they posted on Twitter, which I never got to see. Because guess what? It was even my pastor who rang me. He says, I think your Twitter is hacked. Mm-hmm. And because what they've posted can never come from you. You understand? So your integrity becomes your track record. And your track record, to use your word, becomes your thick skin because it defends you. And that's what we should always live by.
Mm-hmm. I like that. It's a very different way of looking at it, as opposed to saying, let's have a thick skin, but putting integrity at the core of it. Do you have something to add to this?
I would love to add, because I think Mizinga has hit all of the points, and I put all of those points under one thing, and that thing is brand.
Mm-hmm.
Mizinga, the message that went on her Twitter thing was caught by somebody who said, there is no way this can come from Mizinga. Because I know Mizinga is Colgate. She's not some toothpaste that was picked up from some other place. So this is not coming from her. And I put all of that in one space, and that is, let your brand be known. So that when something goes out there, Mercedes have had to recall their cars. Jaguar has had to recall their cars. Volkswagen has had to recall their car. Ford, you name it. They fall flat on their faces, an incident happens, and they are forgiven because of the brand that they carry. That brand comes with air cover. That brand comes with loyalty. And only you can make that brand, and in the same way, only you can destroy that brand. Right. And so everything that Mizinga has said, I totally agree with. And I say, create your brand, manage your brand, register your brand, shout about your brand. And that also means voice and presence, which goes back to your point, Banda. And I'm not excusing myself on this. I feel as though I'm one of those people who could be saying so much more in the public space about what we could be doing better. I think we're doing very well in certain areas of the country, but there's some areas where we could be doing better. I'm one of those. My presence is not as much as it should be. That's part of developing your brand. And that's something that I am working on, thanks to COVID, giving me a lot of time for thought. But that brand is very important. And brand means get your facts right. Brand means be true to yourself. Brand means get your anchors and your loyalty people. And brand means get your voice and your presence out there in a consistent manner.
Yeah.
No, I like that. Brand, integrity, lacing your track record speak for you. That is really important. We have a few questions that have come through, and we'll take them just after this next question because I think they're sort of related. Dolika and Mizinga, you're two ladies that we can arguably say have broken the glass ceiling and even gone way beyond it. In terms of just moving into those executive level positions. The first question, perhaps related to this, that I wanted to find out is, were you aware of this glass ceiling? Did you face challenges? Did women such as yourselves, for instance, face anything in particular that you can even perhaps highlight and mention to us that made it harder for you to climb up the corporate ladder, to get into, the boardroom and to that executive's table? Anything that really pops out to say, okay, these were the main challenges for women such as yourselves?
Mizinga, may I go? Because I have one that it will never leave me. At 24, the MD of Barclays Bank, then Mike McNee, offered me the position of corporate director, Barclays Bank Zambia. I was 24.
Wow.
And we had what we called prayers. Mizinga, I don't know if they still continued when you were there, but every Tuesday we had a management meeting. It was an executive committee meeting. So it was all senior management and actually all the directors, and then the MD himself. And it was on that Tuesday morning at prayers, so 12 directors plus the MD and the deputy MD, that Mike McNee called me into the boardroom of Barclays Bank, Kafua House, and made the announcement that they had decided that I was to be the corporate director. Do you know, out of 12 Black Zambian directors, only one came across the floor to come and shake my hand. Only one. And I will, to this day, I hold my hat out to that one man. And it was then that I realized I was really entering uncharted waters. But the fighter in me said, fine, bring it on. That one stands out. There have been others, but that one really stands out.
Wow. Incredible, first of all, that you were, promoted at age 24. That's amazing. And it's quite unfortunate that the other gentlemen really couldn't, see past, I guess, their ego and the fact that you're a woman and young, and actually to congratulate you. Mizinga, anything in particular that you're able to flag out that sort of, acted as a barrier, maybe for you or other ladies when you were climbing up the corporate ladder?
Well, thanks. And I must say, Dolika, that's a great story, because I know when we were, in the banking sector and looking up to who do we want to be when we grow up, and it was always Dolika, because she would always be, on the business news talking about what's happening. And little did we know what she had gone through, in terms of when she got that job. So a big congratulations. Look, for me, I've got many examples, but the one that always stands out, and I talk about that a lot, and I talk about that, by the way, I'm writing a book, on the women into the boardroom, how to get to the boardroom. And one of the big issues I talk about there is when I was, given an opportunity to act as treasurer. I always wanted to be treasurer. I said one day I'll be treasurer. And I learned everything that there is to be treasurer. And when my boss left, and it was my turn to be promoted, my MD then said, Mizinga, you're going to act for a few months. I said, okay, fine, I'm going to act and I'll do really well. And I continue doing that. And then in the middle of the 3 months, he kind of comes to me and say, we wanted to tell you that we are not going to give you the job because we believe you are not mature yet. But what you can do for us, go out there and see whether you can get us somebody who can do the job. So I went out there and I helped them get a man to come and do the job. But the man was such a great man because, we worked well together. I said to him, let me show you how we do things, around here. Not that you don't know, but around here. But then a few months later, the boss said, but how is Mizinga's attitude? How has she received you? And the boss said, she's received me so well that I think we must send her out to New York, and the rest is history. Because when I came back 10 years later, I was the CEO of the bank. But then it's all, it also, so for me, that was a glass ceiling. Dolika, it worked in her favor. The fact that she was 24 and they gave her. For me, they said, you were too young to take on the treasurer role. And I couldn't just understand why they said that. I think I was about 28 at the time. So what I learned there was we will have barriers, as we're getting to the top, but our attitude is everything. And we should be who God created us to be, who is the women who always face trouble and, issues. But when we bring our best selves with a good attitude, it's like, wow, God fights our battles. So, we shouldn't be like the 9 men who Dolika is appointed, and you have the attitude of, I'm not gonna go and shake her hand. Because when you do your records and say, where are those 9 men versus the one who had a good attitude, you will see that, wow, he has done really well. So we will face a lot of challenges as we rise to the top, but our attitude is everything. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's quite powerful, because as you said, there might be moments when you feel, you're more suited for a position, but because you are young, I mean, it's incredible that Dolika was promoted at 24, but then there might be instances where, they think you're not mature enough. And as we discuss this, there's one question that I just wanted to read out to you, I think relating to this. It's coming from Rhoda Kakoma. So she is asking, what is your advice to a young female entrepreneur facing challenges of not being taken seriously by anyone, but wanting to thrive as an independent woman? And I think this touches a little bit on what you just said in terms of sometimes your age working against you and it being a measure of maturity. I mean, we do agree that a lot of wisdom comes with age, but in terms of using that to marginalize women, so she's asking, what do you do? Mm-hmm. How can you be taken seriously? Mizinga, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, so look, I'm a firm believer in showing up, bringing your whole self to the situation, to work, and just being who you are. Because you can only be at your best if you bring your whole self and not try to be somebody else. And if the firm believes you are not mature enough, I think it's okay to have a conversation. Like I had a conversation with my boss to say, but what will it take me to be treasurer one day? So, and for them, maturity could be defined as maybe you're not there yet in your skills. And that could be true. That could be true, that maybe you think you are ready, but the firm thinks you are not ready. So you shouldn't get all emotional about it, but can you just define where my gap is, so that I work on addressing the gap? I think I find that if you confront the people who are saying, number one, if you're going to stay in that firm, that's okay. And we should not always run out from situations just because they can't give you a role, you run away. But it's, you sit down with your boss and say, let's do a gap analysis on myself. Where am I missing it? Do I need a mentor? I did say to you many a times, when I'm making strategic decisions, and I mean that, I will say to Dolika, let's have breakfast, because maybe there's something I haven't seen about myself, and maybe my boss won't tell me, but maybe somebody else will tell me to say, try and look at it this way. So for me, I guess it's about showing up, being your whole self, but just don't hesitate to do a gap analysis on yourself, because you'll be surprised what you can address. And, and also use a mentor, because a mentor can reassure you, and the mentor will be very honest with you to say, I think your boss is right. Or I think here, maybe they're just being male chauvinists. And maybe this is because sometimes we have blind spots. We can't see what we can't see, right? But somebody else can see it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dolika, your views, what is your advice to Rhoda, who's asking, how can I be taken more seriously? She wants to thrive as an independent woman.
Rhoda, I don't think that Mizinga and I are sitting here as the be-all and know everything kind of people. I think we're just sharing, at least from my perspective, what has worked for me personally. And that's the best that I can bring to the table. I do, you know, I'm a literary person. I love to read and I like a lot of old history. One of my favorite poems is by William Ernest Henley. And I love it also because it was also one of Mandela's favorite poems when he was incarcerated. And it's Invictus. A film was made around Invictus. The last two lines of Invictus say, I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. We will go into turbulent times, but Rhoda, if you really believe in what you're doing, you can't bake a cake without breaking a few eggs. Those situations will come, but you have to stand by what you believe. And against all odds, and I think one of the challenges I have is when we make decisions, but we make half decisions. So you're doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but you're never quite taking the risk that I'm giving this thing my all. Because once you give that thing your all, failure is not an option. So Rhoda, if you leave yourself in a position where you say failure is not an option for me, I have to make this thing succeed. It has to work. If it means I'm going to resign because I believe that my real talent is as an investment advisor, you do that. But if you're trying to do investment advice whilst you're still getting your salary on the other side, you're never going to do either one of those two things well. So when you dive in with both feet and you dive in deep, but you know that you have all the tools that you need to be able to swim and survive. Otherwise, you will sink. That's one. You have to believe in yourself and in whatever it is that you have to do. It goes back to the question of leadership that you asked. Somebody who really believes in what they're doing, they don't care what people think or say about them.
Yeah.
Because that thing is so deep. I've got to do this. And the one test I give myself as well is on that last night on this earth, before I go to meet my maker, what is the thing that I will regret the most not having done? Then you know the answer. You just ask yourself, what is the thing that I will regret if tonight were my last night on this earth? What will I regret not having done? And that list is the list you should start working with. But you are the master of your fate, and it's not easy. Even if we look at some of the men who have succeeded, by the way, that's another thing, Mizinga alluded to this, but for me, most of my mentors in my career have been white males. And I have deliberately chosen white males because they don't go easy on you. When you have that agreement at the beginning, are you ready to mentor me? They'll say, yes, but are you ready for me to be your mentor? Because it's going to be pretty rough.
Yeah.
And they have forced me never to call the race card. Even when I see it, I have to put it around a specific case. So find a mentor, not somebody who's going to be nice to you and soft on you, and my mentee here can tell you. Find a mentor who's really going to push you to the limit. Even as an entrepreneur, even as an independent, whatever it is that you want to do, look at your role models who is like you. Look at your role model who is going to represent your most likely worst possible enemy or worst possible competitor. That should form part of your mentor group. It's a longer conversation. Happy to have it one-on-one so that we can delve into it, Rhoda. But that's what I would say just up front.
Ladies, this is proving to be a very exciting and inspiring conversation, and I think we can see this coming through even through the comments. Let me just read a few comments here. I think some thoughts from Dialis, who just agrees that it does take courage to voice out issues, and many ladies in Zambia are being observed to actually be taking this up these days. She also mentions culture having been a barrier for most women. Leadership is a lonely place, but anointed. Somebody loves this statement, Dolika Naomi. Great perspectives, Dolika and Mizinga. This is coming from Kase, who I have to mention is my sister. Integrity, brand, your integrity becomes your track record. Brilliant. Brand, great perspectives, both to you, Dolika and Mizinga. So a lot of positive comments coming in. There's one from Tokozile who is asking, or rather giving a comment. Sometimes women empowerment seems to be a fight against men. While men have been known to limit women from progressing, please tell us about how the men in your life have supported you in your journey. Ladies, anybody who would like to take that one? Mizinga, how have you been supportive? Your husband, for instance, considering that you have worked in various countries, and that means, you know, relocating, how instrumental is the role of a man in your life in terms of supporting you to progress?
Yeah, to be honest, I always say I wouldn't have managed to do what I've done without the support of my husband, because, you know, I've had to work in many places, work long hours, travel a lot, even when you're working from the same base, especially when you're doing regional global roles, it entails that, you know, you travel a lot, and you do need supportive, you know, a supportive husband, a supportive brother, you know, to support, even somebody where you can say, I'm going to drop my kids there while I'm away. Are you able to help me? So for me, that has worked. But even bringing it back to the workplace and the businesses, I have found that, funny enough, the men, you know, have actually been extremely supportive in seeing the potential in me that I don't see myself. You know, so there are many times when, you know, I've had, you know, a male boss say to me, I think, Mizinga, you can do this role. So when I first did a regional role, which was a head of financial institutions, and I was based in Kenya and South Africa then, it actually took my boss to say, Mizinga, we want to offer you this role. And I'll say to him, but I've never done a regional role before. I've never managed cross borders before. I've never built a brand new business from scratch before. How can I do that? And they say, we see it in you. We see all these qualities in you that you can do it. So it's about finding, you know, working amongst the men who will find that potential in you that you don't see yourself. Because many a times, like I talk about blind spots, we don't actually see. I mean, the only downside is that I had no choice but to support Manchester United, just because it was the only conversation on a Monday morning for the 2 hours. Everybody's talking about how Rooney did this. And I'm like, if I have to be part of this conversation on a Saturday, let me also just watch what these guys are watching. But anyway, so it's the only but yeah. The upside is really finding somebody who, you know, and the men have always almost found the potential in me that I don't see myself. Even when I was coming back to do this role, I know I had difficult conversations with my boss who was saying, Mizinga, just go back to Zambia. You can do it. You're best suited for that. And I'm like, really? That doesn't seem to make sense. And he says, you can do it. And every time he doesn't stop reminding me. He says, look, you're doing such a great job. I always told you that you could do this. So I've had so many men in my life who really, really supported me.
Mizinga, on that note, on, you know, being a supporter of Manchester United, well, as women, we often battle with this question: how do you break the glass ceiling without breaking yourself? And allow me to contextualize it a little bit, without sacrificing your femininity, you know, without to take on so much in a bid to, you know, keep proving yourself, without you know, coming across as being too strong or too emotional, because often women, when, you know, you express yourself quite strongly, you're considered to be too emotional, too strong. So generally, how do you break the glass ceiling without breaking yourself? And I also want you, Dolika, to come in on this one, without, you know, wanting to be part of the boys.
Yeah, good. Dolika, please.
I think Mizinga mentioned at the beginning of the conversation that it's okay to be a woman. You don't have to try, and now it's great because we can wear trousers as well, right? We can wear ties if we want. So you don't have to be one of the boys in order to be part of the income statement.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can bring that value into the room, balance sheet, there are assets and liabilities, income statement, there's income and there's losses. Hey guys, look at what I'm delivering. And just be who you are, be true to yourself, because the moment you try to be somebody else, you will surely falter and you will surely make mistakes. And the way I like to tell this story and personalize it, especially for my Zambian sisters, nephews, cousins, etc., including the boys, is I am Mr. Banda's daughter. My father is progressive in many ways, is traditional in many other ways. When I know that he is in a room where it matters to him how I behave, I will curtsy when I give him his cup of tea. I will go on my knees if there is a friend of his who is so traditional that that is the way he is used to being greeted. When I am in the boardroom, I'm a very different woman, I can tell you for a fact. And I have become comfortable with being this dual personality. Because it's part of what I have to do, and it serves what I have to do. I love to cook, I enjoy cooking, and I do it. And everybody in the office knows that. I don't like going to the pubs, I don't like going to the clubs. So if we have a board meeting and the guys at the end of the day want to go off clubbing, I say more power to you. Let's have dinner. After dinner, you guys can go and do what you like to do. By the way, who would like to come to the spa with me tomorrow morning? And so you establish your relevance and your importance and your contribution in the boardroom, but you never sell your soul. You never give up who you are. And here, Mizinga, sorry, but I'm going to ask a little joke, very quickly, if I may, Wanda, and we don't have to answer it here. But a friend of mine sent it to me, a male friend of mine sent it to me and said, a man is driving his son back home from the interview. And they get a call, and he puts his son on speaker, and the CEO of the company from which he has just come from the interview says, son, congratulations, you have got the job. Who is the CEO?
The mother.
Thank you, Mizinga. People is wrong in the room, and I'm sure even as we're speaking now, people
are wondering.
But in terms of the men behind me, I come from a family of brothers. We have so many brothers. I grew up with a lot of brothers. I also grew up with the leader of the family who said, as long as your name is Banda, you will do what any Banda has to do. So you can look after my boys, but boys, you look after my girl.
That's good.
Everything together. And I thank God for that man. And I thank God for how he has filtered that mindset through to his sons and his daughters. So find those people around you who will celebrate the fact that you're an achieving woman.
That's right.
And teach it to your sons, please. Let them make their own tea, their own bed, their own coffees, please.
I did. Okay, so we have quite a number of questions that are coming in quite fast. Let me just get to a few. So Mobile asking, what can I do to be an exceptional banker and stand out? I recently joined the banking industry and I would like a few pointers on how to conduct myself. And I know this question applies to you both, Dolika, including you, having worked for various commercial banks. And then we also have a question from Sitwala, and these are directed to you both. The first one, what are the growth opportunities available for women in risk management in a financial institution in Zambia? Second, having worked for smaller banks in the past and recently joining a bigger bank, I have noticed that it is much easier to rise in a smaller bank, although the rise is limited in comparison to a bigger bank. How can one navigate rising in a bigger bank and not get swallowed up and stuck in a position which is easy in a bigger bank? And I guess this is part of the glass ceiling where women are failing to sort of move beyond a certain level. Ladies, allow me to just read a few more questions. This one is coming from Cassie, and she's asking, I had a chat with a senior executive, a male, who said women purport to support each other, but realistically they do not. And I think there's a lot of talk around, that who had Down syndrome, mostly coming from fellow women, but instead impede each other or are indifferent to each other's growth. What are your thoughts? Do you think these dynamics are in play? In one more before we get back to you. This is, okay, she is anonymous. Amazing stories from both, but for Mizinga, do you ever find it challenging to balance your relationships with family members and work? Basically, how do you strike a balance between leadership and other important things? And I'm glad this has also been asked because we wanted to get your insights, ladies. One of the biggest struggles for ladies is balancing work and family, striking that balance. How do you do that? Often pursuing a career means you have to be more involved, sometimes having late nights, traveling a lot. How do you strike that balance? We'll start with that last question. I hope you're able to take note of the others. So Mizinga, if you could this one, then we'll move on to the other questions.
Okay, so I don't know which one you want me to do, but maybe let me just touch on whatever, and then Dolika can also do that. In terms of how you succeed in the banking sector, or how you succeed in the big banks and all that, I think like most corporates have a performance-based culture. And the performance-based culture is one that expects you to always understand what is expected of you and perform beyond what is even expected of you. And I know it's very hard, especially when you ask me a question of work-life balance. And when when I'm asked this question by especially people who are just starting their careers, I say to them, there is no work-life balance for you. There's only work, and work. Because don't try, and you have to understand your lane. Don't try and say, look, I'm gonna, balance. It's 5 o'clock. I have to go, because then you only know what you know. For you to go beyond what is expected of you, you have to put that extra time. And that's why you need a very strong support system. And when you're working in a market like Zambia, you just have to thank God, because it's easy to get a good support system here. Maids are affordable, families there, and it's just good to get people who will support you as you are raising your family and raising your as a wife. So I think firstly, work hard, be prepared to work hard, have the skills that are required. And like I said, we spoke about gap analysis. I think that's always, important. And early on in the career, do as much as you can, because we're really only managed by, and we're fair. We try and be fair. So in a performance-based culture, there's fairness. You know exactly what is expected of you, and you do that. But as for me personally, how do I manage my work-life balance? I think, number one, having a great team is like a big start, okay? Because as managing director of a big bank like I ran, you will find that, and I always say, what you plan to do is not what you end up doing in the morning, because the day is just so diverse, and so, especially these days, it's just so different. But if you have a great team, knowing that, they will support me and the work will continue, then you are able to do things like what I'm doing. We could have been having this Zoom meeting on a Monday at 3 o'clock. I've got clients waiting, but how am I going to manage to still have this Zoom meeting and yet have a client who will support, who will need support? It's because I'll have a good, director supporting me there. So having a good team for me is number one. And just being able, it's hard to switch off, but at some point try and switch off if you can, so that you have time, like, eating times. We always debate in my family on don't check your phone because we are eating, but let's have Friday movie night, let's just watch a movie, no phones, because, we have to do that. So you have to be deliberate in your approach to achieve work-life balance. But if you're just starting in your career and you take the work-life balance too seriously, it's going to be difficult for you to get to the next level, sadly. Just because a lot is expected, it doesn't mean it's all work, but you have to go over and above. If you ask Dolika whether she did her 8 to 5 to get to where she got to, she'll tell you that even now she doesn't. just because a lot is expected of you. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Dolika?
Yeah, I think, Mizinga, that's absolutely great segue into that work-life balance question. I think it's a nice term that we all like to use and to aspire to, but in reality, it goes back to this question of balancing our culture, who we are versus the boardroom. The reality is, if you want to do something badly enough, you will have to find a way of making room to do those things that you feel are important to you. For the career building, risk management and banking, I'm putting it all in one because it is all about career building and where do we go. First of all, I think know your subject matter and know it well. Delve into it. In banking, there's some bankers I've asked who cannot give me the 5 key ratios of their bank. They can't name capital adequacy, debt ratio, liquidity ratio, just the top 5 that will tell you whether you're a banker, the NPL ratio, whether you're a banker or not. Know those things. Walk them, eat them, drink them until they are coming out of your ears, even if they are not a part of your day-to-day job. Look at your annual financial statements for your institution, whether it's a bank or any other corporate. Know those financial statements. Know the story of your bank. Wear a t-shirt underneath your uniform or whatever it is that says, I am the CEO. You do that, whether you're in risk management or whatever, you're thinking strategy, you're thinking long-term. And when you're thinking promotion and career progression, don't think, how do I become a manager? How do I become a senior manager? Think, how do I get Mizinga's job? How do I become CEO? And then everything else we've talked about here, including which funerals you go to and which kitchen parties and everything, will fall into place.
Yeah. And Dolika, you also, I mean, to add on to that, the question of, do women bring each other down? You know, that question, I always find it very interesting, because there am I talking about Dolika, who's been a great supporter for many years, who's known me more than people in Zambia have, and who knows my family. And there's also Dolika talking about the 9 people who did not support her when she got promoted. So it just means women are just human after all, just like men are human. There are some who will support you and some who will not support you. And I don't let it get to my head. It's just a human thing. Like Dolika says, not everybody will like you. For every 10 people, if 5 of them like you and they support you and they cheer you on, then you thank God for that. Because there'll be the other 7 who will think, oh my God, how could she do this, or whatever, you know. So, but that doesn't just apply to the women, it also applies to the men. It's a human thing. So we should, and which is why I really like what Dolika says, let's look out for those who support us and let's spend our energy on those, because those are the ones who will make a difference in our lives. And those who don't support them, forget about the race card, I mean the gender card. They're human. They could be men who are not, they'll be the 9 men, and it's okay, it's fine. Focus on those women who will support you, because it's a human thing. You know, it doesn't mean all women should love each other. I mean, if the world was made like that, then I'm sure Jesus would have come yesterday, right? But it's not like, you know, because then would have achieved. So my focus is, I'll build on to what Dolika has rightly said, focus on those who celebrate you. Focus on those who will know that even if they're criticizing me, it's from a good space. They want me to grow. It's from a good place and they want me to grow. But those who, you just know that one, it doesn't matter what I say, that's what I think. Don't worry about them. You know, there's enough to worry about, not to worry about those. And that's my take. It's a human thing.
And if I may quickly add on to what Mizinga has just said, somebody else once told me, Dolika, what other people think about you is none of your business. What other people think about you is none of your business. Great if they think I'm great, could care less if they don't think I'm great. I'm carrying on my path.
Yeah.
They're fantastic responses, ladies. Thank you so much for that. And I like how you phrased it, Mizinga, in terms of, women are just human as well. There will be men who will support you. There will be men who will not, just as, Dolika shared through her story. And there will be women who support you and some who will not. And as Dolika has rightly said, what other people think about you is really none of your business. Tumu would like to know what writers have influenced you and why. And I think we've heard a few of the authors come up here and there, but perhaps this is a question you could take as well. So our guests that have joined in via Zoom, please bear with us. We will get to your questions as much as possible. We'll try to read out each and every question. Those that we feel have been answered, I hope you're listening in attentively and you will note that our two distinguished guests are actually responding to them. So what writers have influenced you and why? Let's take Tumu's question.
Yeah, so maybe I can answer that because maybe I can just mention one or two just because I'm writing. The writer that, I've always been a big fan of Michelle, right? Michelle Obama. And, we're in completely different careers, but I follow what she says and her encouragement to women and how she doesn't see herself as a glass, there's no a glass ceiling. She says, what are you going to be? What are you going to be after First Lady? And she says, there's a long career ahead of me. And one can't comprehend that there can be a big career because that's like the biggest that she can get to. So for me, Becoming is one that if somebody hasn't read, Becoming, please, you must read that. And just, writers like Jack Welch, and his management books, that for me is a big one. And I also do follow, one of the smallest books that I follow is Who Moved My Cheese? I always talk about that because that just helps you, be able to have a focus on what's next, coming in your life. How can you anticipate? So when I decided to start writing my book, I was really inspired by by books like number one, the management books, because I was looking at myself being in the boardroom and just what it has taken in terms of the challenges and how amongst all that I've had to see opportunities to get to where I've got to. Yeah, over to you, Dolika.
Thank you, Mizinga. Thank you so much. And I think it also depends, for me, I go through phases in terms of who I'm reading at any particular point in time. But I also tend to be reading at any point in time 3 or 4 different books because I try to feed the different aspects of my life. We're back to that work-life balance issue. The one book that has consistently been read throughout my life is the Bible. That's a no-brainer. But I find it an amazing book if you step outside of your spiritual and religious side, just in terms of lessons on life. How you go about living your life, identifying what's important to you, the role that you have in life, how you relate to other people. So this one, always on my shelf. I agree with Mizinga, all the management books and the business moguls, I really, really enjoy. And some people find them boring, but I think they're ordinary people behind all of those stories. And they've also had to overcome a lot of adversities. So I learn a lot from autobiographies. And I try to read those in the industry, but also outside the industry. And I agree with you. Becoming, last year, I bought for literally every female person in my family. It was the easiest Christmas I ever had because I just bought them that one book and they love it. Then I do a lot of sort of philosophy stuff, and at the moment, I just finished reading a book called Ikigai. Ikigai is a concept actually on how we balance, for those of you who are talking about work-life balance, based on the Japanese and Eastern philosophies, how you balance your passion, your profession, and your home life. It's a small book, very well worth reading. And then I just love the leadership, political kind of books. So amongst my favorite in that category is Al Maktoum's My Vision. So this is Dubai, the concept behind Dubai and the role that Dubai played in building the United Arab Emirates from sand, literally sand, to what we see today when we all pay our $3,000 every year to go and sit in Dubai for a week. And in 30 years, 25 to be exact, they were able to turn that country from nothing into what it is today. I love the story along a similar vein of Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew was the president of, I want to say Malaysia, Indonesia, that built Indonesia from really scratch. And then I'm trying to find something on Paul Kagame. I yet haven't, but I'm looking for something.
Interesting choice there.
That's my next one. Yeah, closer to home.
Choice. Yes, it is. I like what you said about Dubai. I think there was a video that's been making rounds quite recently, and what comes across is vision, the importance of having a vision.
The vision, absolutely.
Yeah, that can be quite transformational. So let me just get into another predetermined question that we had before we get back to the comments. There's a problem of the gender pay gap. So it is said to be very pervasive in the finance industry, generally where you find that on average, women are earning less than men for doing the same type of work. Now, this is even after we control for factors such as, level of education, experience, as well as, seniority, and perhaps even historical pay. A number of studies have been done where it has been found that, women get paid less merely because they're women. Two questions to you ladies. Did you face this gender pay gap bias issue?
Yeah, and I think again, Mizinga has touched on the key issues. I think it's a good conversation to be having because at least now the world is talking about it. CDC, on whose board I sit, actually published their own gender pay gap 2 years ago. So, and we were not doing well. So it has focused the lens on equal pay for equal work, to simplify it. McKinsey has recently done a really good study on the poor other half on this. But to me, I think it's about a few things that I would have done differently had I joined, and I did experience this, by the way. When you get into a new organization, that is the starting point. And that is the base from which you will be moving. You're not going to get 100% pay raise. So that sets the base. So I think it's very important to know, once we know that we have a problem or we have an issue in this area, it's very important to say, what can I do up front to make sure that I enter this organization at the best possible level I can. I know when I was working at the World Bank, at the IFC, Nigerians would call me before they took a job. Dolika, what is the normal range? People I don't know. My name has been given by somebody else who happens to know me. What is the range that I should ask for in this field to go and do this job? I still get those calls today. For some of these organizations, those salary ranges are actually published. So it's important to do your homework. If it is not published information, talk to others in the industry before you sign on that dotted line. So it's knowing your worth and knowing your value up front. It's very hard to walk away from a job in the current environment. And I think both us ladies who are on this panel have walked away from jobs on this thing where we just said, I don't think you're valuing me properly. And so for that extra $10,000, I'm walking away, or $20,000, I'm walking away. But it's a big sacrifice to make at that point. But know your worth, do your homework. And if it doesn't sit right with you, then don't do it. If it doesn't sit right with you, then don't enter at that level. Once you're in there, it is all the things that Mizinga has talked about. And ask. We don't ask. We tend to say the boss is watching how hard I'm working. Ask every time you go and have your performance appraisal. Say, by the way, nice on where I'm going career-wise. What is the commensurate paycheck? Where do I sit on the curve? Where do you see me sitting on the curve? What do I need to do? That gap analysis thing that Mizinga was saying. If I'm sitting at 75% quartile, what do I need to do in order to have an honest conversation? If you don't ask, you won't get, right?
Yes.
They'll go to the one who's a nuisance and keeps asking and say, okay, John, here you go. You're a pain in my ear, so here you go.
The last question we could look at before we end, which is, I beg your pardon, let me just get to that. It's coming from Violet Kasongo. And she is asking, what is the one thing that you would both advise young ladies to run with during this life journey?
I would just say, think about your brand. Think about when people think of Tumu Mwape, what do they think of? What do you want them to think of? When people think of Tina, what do you want people to think of? And you don't have to work on it on your own. You can get a group of people trusted that you can say, you know, what am I really good at? Where do I form that ikigai of mine? I would just say, go out there and brand yourself.
Okay. Mizinga, mentorship. Are you available for mentorship, and how can the ladies get in touch with you?
And you know what, I was thinking about it the other day because I'm asked that question so many times, and like Dolika, time is always a factor, but you know you have to do that. So I was actually thinking that I would get a lot of like-minded ladies and maybe have one or two group, like maybe small ones, a group of 5, a group of 10, where we exchange notes and just share either a WhatsApp group or a Zoom call, or maybe, you know, like I can't take them for lunch now so we can talk. But please, like, do give me 1 or 2 ladies who we can pick up from here and see how I can support them. But I've really been thinking of having a small group of ladies that we can share and have conversations, because I'm always asked that question. And in terms of what the ladies should remember for the life journey, and I think we've said it all, and Dolika summarized it all in terms of, you know, how do you brand yourself? I would just say, we said it before, follow your dreams. You know, just think of that analogy that was given by Dolika. You know, if you die tomorrow, what would you regret not doing? And do it. Follow your dreams. You can be anything. And that's why whenever I look at my humble life history and where I come from, I always say, if people knew where I came from and how I used to run around mopping the floor for my dad, they would be like, really? Make it to see you. Because I come from very humble beginnings. So, and that's what really it's all about. It's about follow your dreams. It's not about where you're coming from, but where you're going. But don't forget about where you're coming from, because it's the values that you build, that your parents, you know, installed in you, are what makes you who you're going to be in the future. And I think many a times these days, the youth are forgetting about those values. And they want to be big people, but they forget about the values that we instill to them in the homes. So if there's anything, hold on to those values, hold on to your integrity, but don't mistake integrity for giving up your dreams. You know, there's no conflict there. You know, have high integrity, but follow your dream and achieve, because you can be anything. And thank you so much to Alinani for, I don't know whether we're going to be given a chance.
Before you go, ladies, there's one important question that we have to touch on. I apologize. We need to squeeze this in. Alinani is actually reminding me as well. And I do agree that it's a very important question for women to sort of get some insights from you on in terms of how to handle it. So this is on the issue of sexual harassment. And the question is from Ketty. How did you handle issues of sexual harassment during your time with bosses? For instance, it could be a branch manager, it could be a supervisor. And then, I'm sorry, this is not quite clear. Which, when you refuse, I think what she's trying to say is when you refuse the advances of, say, your branch manager or your supervisor, they make your life much, much harder. And they try to make it seem like you're not performing in your duties, and they fire you in some extreme instances for refusing their advances. So how do you handle sexual harassment?
Yes, maybe I can go first. Look, we have and we've had this in all the organizations I've worked in, a very strong sexual harassment policy, which I know policies are just there, but which we really follow very, very strongly. So if we do find that it exists, and there are situations where I've had to, you know, interject because 1 or 2 of my colleagues have been found in that situation. And in one of the situations, it was quite interesting because we were dealing with an expatriate who, just because he was carrying a tag of a white male expatriate, was really harassing one of the ladies. And when she raised it with us, we called a panel. Before we could even talk to him, he was out of the country. He had to just flee because he knew that we don't tolerate that. And when the ladies know that you don't tolerate that, they will speak up, and we have to continually encourage women, especially in the workplace, that speak up, and we've got your back. We've got your back, and we will take the men up on that. And sometimes the reverse can also be true, by the way. So it's really always highlighting the issue that we have an environment where if that happens, we truly take it seriously. But equally, we've had situations where there's been harassment claims that are not substantiated. So again, it's a very fine line. It doesn't, and we say to people that we will take this very seriously, but it doesn't mean the men are immediately victimized just because you've raised it. We have to go through a very vigorous process. So I guess that's how I can address that. Mm-hmm.
Dolika, your views on sexual harassment?
Yeah, and an important topic. It's unfortunate that it's come, I should say last but not least, something for which I have zero tolerance for. And I think every individual man or woman should have zero tolerance for. So if you are the done to, you had better speak up. Otherwise, it will not stop. And the moment you tolerate it that one time, you've opened a door that you will never be able to close. And then the story can even be used against you because, oh, it wasn't the first time. So what happened the second time? What happened the third time? So if the doer does not speak up, if the done to does not speak up, the doers will not stop. They will not stop. There is a much bigger victim-focused approach to this issue today than historically. And I'm afraid women, ladies, we are going to have to butt our heads against this and keep moving. It does have the repercussions that you're talking about. But if you don't stop it, it will happen to the next person. It will happen to your daughter. It will happen to your granddaughter. We've got to take a stand at some point. And the first people to take a stand never have it easy. But this is who you are. And by the way, it destroys you as a human being. Because you blame yourself. What did I do to put myself in this situation? You will never perform properly at work. You will never be at your optimal at home. So the moment it happens, you put a stop to it. If it means you transfer to another department, transfer to another department. But know also the policies very, very well. As Mizinga has just said, there are policies in all these issues in any well-governed institution today. Know those policies well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's a very painful subject matter. We could have a whole conversation on this alone.
That's true.
And it's a shame that it came at the end. Ladies, I just want to thank you both for your time. Again, just a big thank you to the Straight Up Company, to Bongo Hive for facilitating, giving us the electronic platform over which to do this. And try as much as possible to have a part 2. Thank you to all the guests that managed to actually log in and take part in this chat. We appreciate your very active participation. It has been very engaging, and we appreciate the insights from Mizinga and Dolika, and we hope to have you back for a part, possibly so that we can just exhaust some of the questions that came through that we didn't have time to go over. So thank you so much. Thank you to the Straight Up Company, and thank you to Bongo Hive and everyone else that managed to join in. Unfortunately, this is the end of our chat. So ladies, Godspeed, have a great evening, and thank you.
Thank you to you for facilitating, and Bongo Hive Alinani, you know I'm a big fan of all of you, and thanks for bringing me back to see my sister. If only you meet, but it's good to see you, Mizinga.
Thank you so much, Big Sis. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care. Bye, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye.